Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining me tonight. My name is Catherine Daly. I'm the Park County Housing Coalition Program Manager with HRDC District 9 here in Livingston. And it's so nice to meet many of you in person. Some of you I already met. My pronouns are she, they. Feel free to use them interchangeably. I am delighted to welcome you to the first session of the Park County Housing Coalition's Pilot Accessory Dwelling Unit Workshop. So thank you for showing up and testing out these materials with us. We're trying to figure out what's most useful for folks like you who are considering building your own accessory dwelling unit. I have a couple announcements before we begin. As I mentioned, we're recording the event and that video and photo waiver is going around. Laura, come on up and sit up at one of these tables, please. Second, I'd like to thank our AARP volunteers tonight, Becky Miller, who is a mortgage loan officer with Opportunity Bank, and Jennifer Severson, who's the planning director with the City of Livingston. I really appreciate their time this evening. I would also like to thank AARP for providing a grant to support this workshop, and HRDC for their ongoing support of the coalition, and the coalition's many financial supporters. I am going to start presenting. Folks online, can you see the slides? Joe says yes. Looks like folks in the room can hopefully see the slides. Excellent. So I just want to thank our other financial supporters, Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, the City of Livingston, the Southwest Montana Flood Relief Fund, generous community members, Opportunity Bank, Montana State University Extension Park County, the Candida Fund, Livingston Healthcare, and Glassy Baby. They are all making this possible tonight, us offering this workshop for free.
I lost it already.
Okay. So what is our agenda this evening? We're going to start with a little welcome game called This or That. This will help you just get to know each other and break the ice. And then after the game, I'll share some goals for the workshop, this session, and provide a very brief introduction to the Park County Housing Coalition for those of you who aren't familiar with our work. I'll also talk about why we're focusing on accessory dwelling units this year. Then Becky will walk us through how lending institutions define accessory dwelling units and various financing pathways, including some ones that are new as of last October that exist for this housing type. After that, we'll take a short break, so you won't have to power through 2 hours without a break. And then when we come back, I'll walk us through some basic considerations around budgeting, and we'll take a look at those worksheets that I sent out to get you sort of warmed up with using them. Then we'll talk about homework for the next session, because you will have a little, and then we'll wrap up and get out of here. All right. So I would like to start us off with our game called This or That, and it's basically like a themed version of the game Telephone. And can anybody guess what our theme is today? It's on the screen, but say it with me now. Accessory dwelling units. Yeah, ADUs. So it starts with one person asking another person to choose between options. So I'm going to demonstrate with Becky. So Becky, would you rather have an accessory dwelling unit with a mountain view or a sauna?
Mountain view.
Okay, great. So Becky would prefer an accessory dwelling unit with a mountain view. And then Becky goes to another person in her group. I'll pretend to be person C in this instance. And you can offer me 2 options, one of which is the option that you selected. So, okay. Yeah.
Would you prefer an ADU with a mountain view or an ADU with 2 levels?
Oh, I think I prefer an ADU with a mountain view. And so it continues. So every person will get asked the question and have the opportunity to introduce a new option into their group. On the screen, it says that we are going to have 2 groups of 15, but that is not how the layout of this room works, and I don't want to make all of you get up. So let's just do it by the tables that you're in currently. Folks online, I think what I will do is I will mute us for this exercise, and you can all come off mute and talk to each other and play the game with each other. So we'll just have everyone will have about 1 minute to answer. So I will set a timer since we're in smaller groups, I'll give us about 10 minutes maybe for this exercise. And yeah, that'll get us started. Does anybody not understand how this works? Online, anybody not ready? All right, seems like we get it. Okay, great. Well, I am going to mute us here so that folks online can have their conversation, and then you all can get started with the game. I'm going to say that the person to start the game, at least for those of us in the room, is going to be the person who is closest to this wall on the right-hand side, or your right, Looker's right of the table. So I think it would be Chip, Bob, Scott, Janice. Yeah. And if you're here for the workshop, come please sit at the table. Come on up. Come on up. Okay, you should come on up and sit at a table so you can participate in the game.
Okay.
All right, folks online, I'm going to mute you and you can start your game, and I'll bring us back in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right, enjoy.
Well, Erin, would you like an ADU with a clawfoot tub or a shower?
A clawfoot tub. Okay. I don't know, Lila, are you participating, or I see you're on mute?
I'm here. I think we're the only ones in the recording now.
I know, I think we are too.
For sure.
Okay, so would you prefer an ADU with a clawfoot tub or one with a yard,
Oh, a yard.
access to a yard?
Definitely a yard. Should I keep going, or do you guys want to just wait to get called back?
Maybe ask Joe.
Okay, yeah. Would you prefer a yard or ADA accessible?
I'll go with the yard. Well, that was quick.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go grab a snack and wait for the larger group to rejoin. But thanks for playing.
Enjoy your snack, Lila.
Thank you.
My God, are you going to stay this whole 2 hours, sweetie?
I don't know about that.
That's a tough one.
I'm eating right now. While I'm doing this. It's 2 hours, huh? I didn't realize it was 2 hours.
Yeah, I kind of didn't realize that either, but that's okay. I'm gonna tough it out, babe.
I'm curious to see what else is. I didn't even look at the agenda. Is there an agenda?
Let me find it. She had it on the first slide. If you go, you know that there's a whole bunch of materials,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you
Is it
open,
in that email?
yeah, well all the Excel files.
Oh, yes. Okay, I see it.
Well, ignore the Excel files.
Oh, okay.
But in the PDF, PowerPoint, like on the first page is the agenda.
Okay.
So where are we? We're 7:45. That would be 5:45. So we're running a little bit behind.
Oh, I see. Yep. Okay. welcome, game this or that, 50 goals for class and intro,
Yeah.
financing options.
So that's the part I'm hoping that they'll dig in a bit.
But is this tied in with the money for in the urban, growth?
No.
Okay.
So the woman who's running this, Catherine, she is an HRDC, like that's like I think that's her main job. But then they kind of came up
Hey,
with this.
folks online, I think we're wrapping up the game in the room. Just out of curiosity, did anybody's tables or among the folks online, was there a popular option that once it was introduced, everybody stuck with? I'm seeing some nods. I'd love to go around. Let's start with this table. What was your popular option?
With it being detached rather than part of that.
Oh, a detached ADU. All right. How about any other table want to share their most popular option?
Private garden.
Private garden. Ooh, okay. I like this. Yeah. Folks online, was there a popular option in your group?
A yard.
A yard. Okay. Kind of similar to private garden. Other folks in the room, a very popular option? Anything different? No sauna. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for playing that game. I hope you learned a little bit about each other, and there should be more opportunities for that as we move forward. But I'd love to get us started into the meat of tonight's event. So I'd like to introduce you to our workshop goals, which are broadly to sort of promote responsible investment in this housing type that we know might be able to meet some of our community's needs. Build a community of people who are interested in how you all can use your ADUs to support community housing goals. Provide education and resources to help you make informed decisions, and get some candid feedback on whether and how the Park County Housing Coalition can support the creation and use of accessory dwelling units to support community housing goals. So that's sort of what we're aiming for with the workshop at large. Again, this is a pilot program, so we're just testing all of this. So I'll be looking for your feedback at various intervals, and we'll see how this goes. Tonight's goals are to establish a basic understanding of why the Park County Housing Coalition is interested in accessory dwelling units, how lenders define accessory dwelling units, some conventional and government financing options for accessory dwelling units, and some budget considerations for you all if you're planning on or in the midst of a build. Any questions about those goals? Okay, great. Hopefully pretty straightforward. So I'd love to share a little bit. Oh, thank you.
Oh, we got one more.
All right, thanks. We can collect that at the break. Thank you again for all taking a look at that photo and video waiver so that we can record this and share it with other folks who might be interested in this content. So about the Housing Coalition, first of all, who has heard of the Housing Coalition? Show of hands. Okay, awesome. Well, like most of the folks in the room, folks online, we are a program that's currently being incubated within the HRDC's Community Development Department, and it's supported by a host of community partners, and has been supported by a host of community partners for many, many years. And those include our financial supporters, who I introduced at the outset of this, and other folks like the Park County Community Foundation and others who've been involved for a very, very long time. Briefly, our work is guided by the 2022 Housing Action Plan for Park County, and it's currently being implemented with nearly 100 individual and organizational members. And an event like this is a great example of what this looks like. Our Our mission is to simply increase opportunities for Park County residents to access housing where we can afford to live and thrive. And as far as what the coalition actually is on the inside, it's me, the Housing Coalition Program Manager, and our wonderful 9-person steering committee, which includes Becky. You can read the bios of our other steering committee members on our website under the About Us section. The Park County Housing Coalition, or Park County Housing Action Plan, is also available on our website for you to peruse if that's of interest. So why accessory dwelling units? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, the coalition's work is guided by the 2022 Housing Action Plan, and that plan identifies 12 tools and strategies to help address housing needs that were documented in this 2021 Park County Housing Needs Assessment. And one of those 12 tools is accessory dwelling units. So that is something that the community identified as one of the puzzle pieces, not the only one, but one of the puzzle pieces to help address our housing needs. Something that's very relevant today is that the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, published a policy last October that created new financing pathways for accessory dwelling units. And as Becky will show us, some institutions like Freddie Mac have followed suit, and she's actually been able to use some of these financing pathways with her clients. So that financing piece is having an impact. Another reason why we're focusing on accessory dwelling units this year is that last year, the Montana legislature passed some enabling legislation to help clear the way from a regulatory perspective for folks to build accessory dwelling units. That will be a little bit more salient in our session 2 workshop in October that focuses on permitting and design. So I'll just leave that where it is. But those are some of the reasons why. The AARP, one of our sponsors for tonight, touts the benefits of accessory dwelling units because they can incorporate universal design features, also something we'll be talking about at the next session, and offer opportunities for multi-generational living and aging in place and creating livable communities. Some of the financing institutions that Becky will be focusing on have options exclusively for this use. And this is particularly important because, as many of you know, nearly a quarter of our residents are age 65 and older, and that share of the community is growing. Furthermore, accessory dwelling units can provide an additional income stream for lower income homeowners, and both Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have mortgage options for this scenario, so that's exciting. And then last but not least, accessory dwelling units have the potential to provide rental opportunities to households who wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to afford to live in that neighborhood, right? It's a form of gentle infill that creates opportunities in some great neighborhoods. Any questions about that? Right. Yeah, you've been thinking about ADUs, you know this stuff. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about the Coalition's 2024 ADU pilot programming. This is what it looks like to implement a tool from the Housing Action Plan. So it started in April when we held a accessory dwelling unit financing seminar that was geared toward folks in lending, real estate, construction, appraisals, and related fields to help them learn about the FHA's new policies and the ripple effects it was having through the industry, so that they could all be on the same page about these new financing options. Now we're doing a program that's focused more on folks like you who are property owners who are interested in building their own accessory dwelling units. And as I mentioned, this is supported with AARP, and we kicked it off with those accessory dwelling unit tours in Livingston and Gardner. Just quick show of hands, who was able to participate in those tours? Anybody? Awesome, nice, cool. Well, if you didn't make it to those tours and are curious, talk to one of the folks that raised their hands during the break. We also have some of the information that we shared on those tours up at the front. If we run out, I'll bring more to next class, and I'll be posting those materials online too. So now that you're more or less caught up to where we are, I am going to hand it over to Becky Miller to get into financing options. But before we begin, I just want to thank you again because Becky has been instrumental in creating this content and has been a really wonderful volunteer and delivered this content at our April seminar. I also want to thank Brad Hansen with First Interstate Bank, who reviewed this content and has continued to be helpful and remains interested in this housing type as well. If you're interested in either of their business cards, we have them up at the front and you can get them during the break. All right, so Becky, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you.
I can do the
Yeah,
slides.
you do the slides. I'm gonna stand up because I have some nervous energy. Okay, so I'm Becky Miller. I'm a mortgage lender with Opportunity Bank. Been in the industry for about, I don't know, 20 years or so. So mostly we're just going to go through what it would be like to finance a existing ADU, to purchase a new home that has an ADU, or come up with some plans to get funds to be able to build an ADU on your property. And then what some of the financing terms are. So how do we as lenders define an accessory dwelling unit? This has really, throughout the years, really come down to a very specific definition. So it has to be self-contained living area, space, or unit, which means, you know, it has to have its own entrance.
Oh, sorry, I can
That's
go
right.
back.
Self-contained area, space, or unit. Like it can't just be in the middle of your existing home. It can't be your back bedroom or the back great room that you threw a kitchenette in. It has to have, it has to be self-contained. It always has to be subordinate in size to the main unit. So the main unit always has to be bigger. That can be added to, created within, or detached from the primary. So there's many different ways that an ADU can be structured and then categorized as an ADU on your property. And it needs to constitute a single interest in real estate with the primary one unit dwelling. So what that means is nobody, not the city, the county, the appraiser, no one can consider it a 2-unit. It has to be a 1-unit property with an ADU. And we used to have a really hard time doing that. And in the last few years, especially in this last year, that's really, really started to be very defined. And they have a way easier time of considering something an ADU now. So next slide. Okay. Self-contained. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're conventional lenders. FHA, VA, rural development, those are government financing options. Okay, so they each have their own set of rules and things that you need for them to consider it an ADU. So Fannie and Freddie and FHA need you to have separate entrances. And Freddie and Fannie go a little bit more on saying that it has to be limited access. So you can't have multiple ways to enter the home. You can have a front door and a back door, but you can't have like, oh, you can also get through the master bedroom into it of the main home. You know, you can't have multiple. Potential disqualifiers are separate utility meters and separate addresses. This is really on Fannie. Freddie doesn't really consider that anymore, but there was a time and place just a few years ago when you were financing or someone was going to buy something or you were refinancing your home and you had an auxiliary unit, but it had its own address on the outside of the home. It was 2-unit, no matter what. And if the utilities were separate, it was 2-unit, no matter what, which means different interest rates, different down payment requirements. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question like that. The city of Livingston requires now that you have separate water and sewer.
Yeah. And so now, now I can go with Freddie Mac and get financed as an ADU. As long as it's a smaller unit, smaller in size from the primary home, it's not as big a deal anymore. So it's just finding a lender that has all this information and making sure that they can fit you in the right product. Great question, Pam.
Is this for purchase or construction or both?
So this would be for construction, for purchase, and for refinancing.
Mhm.
Because on most of the construction, even if you do a construction loan, you have, most of the time, you're gonna turn it into some sort of financing after the construction. The construction loan is usually a short term. Okay, next slide. Okay, self-contained, living area. So again, FHA, Fannie, you can see on the bottom, it tells you the differences. So they all have to have a bathroom, a bedroom, and a kitchen. And this is just different definitions of how each of those investors consider those. So, you have to have a bathing area for Fannie, but Freddie's or FHA is very specific, like you have to have a sink. You have to have a toilet, you have to have a bathtub or a shower. I can honestly tell you that I feel like Freddie Mac is kind of our easiest lender to get these ADUs financed or to refinance a home with an ADU. Okay, next slide. Okay, it always has to be subordinate in size. So, finished area, gross living area, gross floor area. Most of the time they're pretty similar. But it does always have to be smaller than your main primary home.
Is it not, is a certain percentage smaller?
No, I
Well-
wish they'd get.
Actually, not for lenders, but when
we.
we talk in our next session about permitting, then we'll get into that. Mhm.
Yeah, not for lenders. And that's probably because we're doing many areas, throughout the nation. But
If you had a property without the primary house on it, would you have to just separate out the utility meters or you have to put a larger?
okay, so say that again. If we had a property that didn't have a primary house on it.
Yes.
So you were just gonna build a small home?
Or you were going to build multiple ADUs on a single property, but a primary home doesn't already exist.
So multiple ADUs on a single property is gonna be a multi-unit property. It's not gonna be considered an auxiliary dwelling unit. Unless you make one of them the biggest one and one a little bit smaller. Yeah,
So it'd be very the size.
right. There has to be a way for the appraiser, mostly it's the appraiser, to go out there and say, this is the main home, and then this is the auxiliary dwelling unit.
But you're limited. You can have like 3.
You can have up to 4 and get residential financing. Anything over 4, then you're going into a commercial financing area. You also have to think about when you're financing it. So I'm on the financing side of everything. So when you say multiple ADUs on one's a little bigger than maybe the other 3, are we going to find value for that? And right now, value is kind of an issue because there's not a lot of these that are being sold and built. And, so we're a non-disclosure state. So trying to find appraisers that can give us comparable properties sold, that would be an issue. For financing. But the more this grows and interest and the more ADUs that we get built, the better that'll be.
Question,
Yep.
does the property owner have to live on the property?
No,
There's an ADU, so you could rent both of them, is that correct?
yes.
Thank you.
You can have an investment property with an ADU. Just has to be subordinate in size.
And just want to clarify,
Yeah.
that you're answering from the finance perspective.
Yeah.
I am
For you
answering,
guys.
yes, I am answering as a financing, whether, I'm not answering for zoning.
Yeah.
Of course, zoning will be looked at.
You might want to just line them both up and make sure you're checking all the boxes.
Mhm.
before you do that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yes.
Can we actually hold questions? I have time for Q&A. I should have told everybody that, but I want Becky to be able to get through her presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes subordinate and location appearance. So rural development in VA, they're government financing. And if you're going to do that type of financing, they're more focused on the primary residence. And that all their loans are for people purchasing their primary residence. And they want to make sure that it is not at all in any shape or form could be the primary. It has to be subordinate in not only size, but location and appearance, and contributes less of value. So again, has to be, you can't have that one just, with all the bells and whistles, and then the house is like builder grade. Okay, for financing. That's on Freddie. And again, these are going to be determined mostly by the appraiser that goes out and does the appraisal. Okay, next slide. So here's different ways that you can have an ADU for financing purposes. It can be attached to the home. It can be an upper level with separate entrance and basement with a separate entrance, detached, over the garage, or a full garage conversion. We see a lot of those in Garner. Full garages converted. Next one. And again, constitute a single interest in real estate with the primary one-unit dwelling. So it just cannot be considered two separate units. So it needs to be, this is the home and this is the auxiliary unit.
Mhm.
All right.
Great.
Okay, construction types. If the primary dwelling is site built, so stick built, then your auxiliary dwelling unit can be also site built, stick built. Okay. It can be a modular, which a modular is a home that's pre-built and then, craned onto the foundation, but it sits on a foundation, it's permanent. And a HUD code manufactured home. So the manufactured home shows up on wheels, has an axle underneath it. So you can have a manufactured home, or excuse me, a stick-built home with a manufactured modular or a stick-built ADU for financing. But if your main primary unit is a factory-built home, so a manufactured home, it has to be site-built for everything except for one loan program that Freddie Mac does called the Choice Home Program for Freddie. But I can tell you there's not a lot of lenders that are signed up with this Freddie Choice Home Program. So most of the time we won't have an option for two manufactured homes on the property. The main home being manufactured or factory built and the ADU being a manufactured or factory built. So they'll have a serial number on it. It will have wheels underneath it that you take off and stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just want to add something on HUD code.
Yep.
So not all modular or manufactured, AKA mobile homes, are HUD code certified. If you
Yes.
buy them and they're older than, if they were built before 1976, yeah, then they will not be HUD code certified, or there are some manufactured there are types of housing that are being built today that are not HUD code certified. Their factory has to get evaluated. So if it doesn't have that little serial number and
Correct.
the little,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it has to be HUD code manufactured.
Mhm.
Okay. Add an ADU to a single family property that you already own. So here's some financing options. You want to add an ADU to your current property. We can do cash out refinancing, which leverages the equity that you currently have in the home. You don't touch your first mortgage if you have a first mortgage, and we can use rental income, even potential rental income. So what we do is we get an appraisal, and the appraiser goes out and does a rent schedule and tells us what they think, what the average is for that size of home as an auxiliary unit, what you can get from monthly income, long-term rental. You don't have to have a lease for that existing. You can be doing short term, but to qualify, I would have to consider long-term rental income. If you need it, you might not need it, but it could get somebody who wouldn't qualify with enough income to be able to get some of that cash of equity out to build an ADU or finish an ADU. The choice renovation mortgage with Freddie Mac is it is a program that allows you to purchase, this one is added, yeah, okay. This one allows you to refinance your full current mortgage that you have if you have one, and then add a construction loan on for building an ADU. You get a little better interest rate this way than doing a cash out refinance. You can go, and it also uses the value of the home with the ADU, whereas the cash out refinance will use your current value of your home without any of the construction done. So if you don't have enough equity, the way it sits right now, but you know you're going to get a bunch of equity based off of the addition of an ADU, the construction of an ADU, we get to use that value on this program. And then the choice home mortgage is again for that manufactured home option. Fannie Mae just has the same exact thing, except for they use a little bit less of the income, but they have the cash out refinance. They have the home style renovation mortgage, which is the same thing as Freddie Mac's choice renovation. They do have some energy efficiency refunds that you can get for that. Loan level price adjustment, that'll go to the rate and the cost that you get, the cost that you're charged for the interest rate. And then a construction to permanent loan. So just building a new home with an ADU on it. Our construction financing with most lenders just works as, you know, the total cost of the project, including the build of the ADU and the primary residence. And then doing a draw process throughout and then turning it into a permanent mortgage once you're done. Next slide.
Here are your government options.
Oh.
Leather.
I was like, what? Yes, FHA has a cash out refinance. Again, we can't use the rental income as effective income on the FHA cash out refinance. The 203K rehabilitation mortgage is just FHA's product for the same thing, whereas if you want to, you want to do construction on an add-on an ADU. So you can do a 203K rehabilitation.
Like a over the garage kind of a situation.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And it allows you to close the loan in a one closing. You lock in the interest rate, and then you can do the construction draws. It's pretty much the same program as Fannie Mae's home style renovation and Freddie's home choice. Just a FHA version. There's a couple just small details. You have to have, it had to have been the primary dwelling for at least a year. The total of value of the property, there's a current FHA mortgage limit for per county, so we have to stay within that. VA only allows you to do a cash out refinance. Again, anytime you do a cash out refinance on your primary residence VA, you can use those funds for whatever you want. But so you're leveraging your equity, you're refinancing your current loan and pulling out equity in the home. We don't get to use any rental income on an ADU on VA or rural development, again, just because they're primarily focused on the person buying a primary residence and not making money off the home. You're getting a lower interest rate, you're getting lower fees to get that type of loan, so they're not really looking for you to make income off that loan. Portfolio products. So we do have bank products that you can get with your local banking institutions, home equity line of credit. So this allows you to keep your current mortgage. So let's say you locked in at a fabulous 2% interest rate back in the days where, but you want to take advantage of some of that equity you built in up in your home to be able to build an ADU on your property. You can do a home equity line of credit. It's usually interest only, minimum payments. And the idea is it has a drop period of 5 to 10 years. And the idea is that you use it kind of like a credit card. So you use it, pay it back, use it, pay it back, which can be pretty awesome when you're doing construction, because you can use it as you need it instead of some of the other loans. You're getting all that money at once. You're getting all that interest at once. Home equity loans, same thing. You're taking out the equity. It's coming in a second lien position. The home equity line of credit will be a second lien position to your first mortgage. You're not having to touch your first mortgage, but they term it out. So you do a fixed payment and you usually get all that money at once on a home equity loan. Cash out refinance, pretty much the same as a cash out refinance, except for you're not having to pay off your first mortgage. A cash out refinance would be always in first lien position, whereas this would be in second behind your first mortgage. Okay, next slide.
Excellent. Is anybody, I guess I'll just ask, is anybody in the room or online in this situation of needing to buy a primary dwelling unit with an existing ADU or might be interested in that? Because if nobody is, we can also potentially skip it.
Okay.
But we can also cover it if folks are interested in it.
I can just do it real fast. The biggest thing to know is if you're looking at going out and purchasing an ADU, a property that has an ADU, it really comes into play with being able to use the potential rental income from the ADU. So if you might qualify for more home than what you're expecting, because we can use the rental income up to 75% of what the appraiser says you could get for a long-term rental on that property. So that is the biggest thing that is new. That just came down within the year.
And actually, now that you're saying that, Becky, it might be for some of you who are building an ADU to expand your home for your family or sell it, that might be a consideration, whether you want to build on your existing property or just find a home that already has an accessory dwelling unit and move there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And these slides will be available to you. So if this is something you're interested in, the biggest thing is just taking, especially in our market, our county, getting people qualified for homes is hard based on the purchase price and our area median income. So this really helps a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know about it because it's pretty new. Okay. You buy a primary dwelling. So you purchased a primary, or you're in the process of purchasing a primary dwelling, and you want to build an ADU. So we have that 203K with FHA. So that allows you get a contractor, you get the cost, we add it to the price of the home that you're paying, and then we do the loan based off of the total cost. So the cost of the purchase price plus the cost of building the ADU. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA all have options of financing that. We close on the date that you close, that's already on your buy-sell agreement for the home, and then we do draws until you finish the construction. Your contractor finishes the construction of the ADU. And then once that's done, I send an appraiser back out there and they say, yes, it matches your plans and specs that you gave me in the beginning and you're good to go. So that is a cool option. I call it the HGTV loan because that's when I say you're qualified for 500 and you find a property for 250 and you're like, ooh, I have a budget of 250 to do something. Then these are the programs that allow you to do that. Not just a regular conventional or FHA mortgage. Next slide.
Awesome.
Okay, that's it.
All right.
All right. Do you want to do questions? Yes.
Yes, I do actually.
Okay, great.
The first one is, can you build an ADU in your house? All kinds of business districts on our street.
Okay. I am financing. I'm not zoning. So if you ask me as a lender, if you can build an ADU, if I could finance an ADU in the business district, as long as is it dual? Zone dual? Business residential?
Yeah.
Yeah, then for me, the answer is yes. I'm not sure about,
I just have one question, because I know we're gonna talk about this in a different one. Does your lending rely on, the project being compliant with the local zoning code?
so most of they're existing, already built. So we're not having somebody go in there and say, is everything up to code? I mean, so these are
Not building
existing.
code. Oh.
Yeah, and zoning.
Build one? She just asked if you could build one,
Yeah, if I can build an ADU.
so a new one.
Yeah, okay, then you would have to, your general contractor would be getting permits and all that fun stuff that we would make sure they had, and I'm sure they would be told by local government if they could or could not do that. If it's okay with the local government, then for financing, as long as you're duly zoned, it's okay.
Okay, well, we did an addition, and considering the local government was like, oh, you're in the business district, you can do anything you want. I'm hoping that will.
And that
Carry
is
over.
for the next session.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, yeah.
The scenario you just described, where you're buying a home
Yes.
with a plan to add the ADU. So you have a purchase price for your home
Correct.
and you qualified for a loan.
Yep.
In the total amount that the ADU will add to that loan. So do
Mhm.
you have then a portion of the loan already advanced to pay the seller?
Right.
And then you have a portion of construction financing
Correct.
for the ADU. And you have not closed into permanent financing on either one of them at that point. You finish the ADU.
No, you actually close on the whole thing. And you start making your payments on the whole entire thing. And we set the funds in an escrow account, and then the draws are pulled out of a separate escrow account.
Okay, so you've escrowed a portion of your permanent financing.
Correct.
And then it's distributed as your ADU gets built.
Correct.
And,
If there's any extra, it goes to principal at the end.
have you had any experience with that?
Yeah.
So what does it do to your interest rate?
Nothing, your interest rate's locked in.
As if it were just a building we were buying.
Correct. Yep. You lock in your interest rate during the application and your purchase.
Then does the appraiser have to prospectively appraise what your
Correct.
ADU is going to be worth?
You get a subject to appraisal, so it's subject to the building being complete based off plans and specs that are provided.
All right, so your appraiser, you at least have knowledge that your appraiser is looking at plans and specs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Anyone?
So, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
interest rates, how do they compare to a regular mortgage?
On the program that I just talked about, like the renovation
Just
loan.
in general for ADUs, are they?
80, so most of the time when we're doing, if you're buying or refinancing an existing home that has an ADU, and it's just like one ADU, it's the same as a primary residence, or a single family, if it's investments, things one unit. So, because it's the same rates because it's an auxiliary unit. So there's not separate pricing for that.
if I would build one on my existing property, are the interest rates generally more, reasonable than general regular mortgage rates?
It's gonna be the same. If you're looking at getting a construction loan or a cash out refinance, if you're doing a cash out refinance to finance the bill of that ADU, then that's gonna be probably a higher rate than if you were purchasing a home with an ADU. Just because the cash, you're taking equity out, anytime you're taking equity out of your current loan, it's a more of a risky loan, and we have a higher rate for that risk. I hope that answers. Auxiliary units on a regular home, it's pretty much considered a 1-unit home with an auxiliary unit, same type of financing. Okay,
Part of that might have been answered. So I own a rental home.
Yep.
It happens to sit on 2 lots.
Yep.
They are small lots. But is there an advantage to have that as an ADU? Or does it make more sense to separate the lots and build, if able, from the city? I don't know that.
okay, so what I can say on that is for financing side of it, no matter where you put it, as long as it's smaller in size and we're taking the collateral of both lots and the current home and where the ADU is, it doesn't matter for me. I would tell you that maybe for resale value or future, putting it on its own lot might be, and if you could separate it out, might be something that you end up with 2 homes, 2 lots at some point in time. So I would definitely tell you to explore that with the county and city and see if that would make sense, because, for financing, I would go in and consider it an ADU no matter where you place it on the property. But it is a good conversation to have with other people who are better experts in that, because maybe you could potentially have 2 separate legal addresses and homes eventually, if you ever wanted to.
But not for the life of the loan, right? Because it has to constitute a
If
single
you're
interest.
it has to constitute a single interest. You would have to pay off the loan or sell that, you know what I'm saying, and refinance. But it is something to think about. But for me, I don't care where you put the home.
So is there an interest rate advantage or disadvantage to have a 2-unit as an ADU versus an independent unit on a separate lot?
I would always want to consider it an ADU because if not, then it's a 2-unit property and the interest rates are way higher on multi-unit properties. So, yes.
So I know that you can finance an ADU. Is it still considered, or are you, will finance if you are building a garage as the bottom floor?
Right.
That's yours,
Right.
and the ADU on top of it?
So you're not really just financing an ADU, right? You're financing your entire property.
The whole, right.
Yeah, so if you're looking for funds to build a garage with an ADU above it, then you're looking at either doing a cash out refinance on the whole property. You're looking at doing a home equity loan where you keep if you have a first mortgage, you keep that. If not, then you just pull out some equity and you do it as a line of credit or a loan. And those funds are yours to use to build the garage. We're just going to encumber the whole entire thing if you're doing like a mortgage, the entire property. which would be which would be your home, the garage, and the ADU. Because we're
Oh,
gonna,
so like if you don't have a mortgage, but you could do one that would cover it.
it's gonna cover everything. It's gonna cover everything that is in your legal description. So if your home's in your legal description and the new garage and the ADU, our collateral would be the entire thing. Not just the ADU.
Right. And so then when we would actually be able to do this, the
Mhm.
specific company we go with, they would advise us on which is the best method for us of all these.
The mortgage company, if you needed to get financing, yes, that's our job.
Versus a HELOC versus,
Yes, for sure.
okay.
I mean, we're gonna ask you questions like, what's your purpose? What's your rate on your first mortgage? Do you own it outright? Like, are you gonna live in the primary home? Are you gonna rent both out? And then once, are you gonna pay it back? How fast are you gonna pay it back? How much equity do you have? We're gonna ask all those questions, and if your lender's not asking those questions, they should be, so that they can put you in the right product for you.
Folks online, do you have any questions?
Not right now, no.
Are you still hearing the conversation okay, Joe?
Yeah, if you could repeat the question, I know it's a little,
Okay.
a little bit of a pain, but, sometimes I can't hear the questions.
Thank you.
Is there any other?
I have a quick.
Yeah.
When you were mentioning at the end, the 75% rental income.
Correct.
You
Mhm.
may have answered this, sorry. if I
No,
missed it.
you're good.
Does there have to be a rental history or can it be projected?
No, that's awesome. So the question was, can we use projected rental income without having a history? And the answer is absolutely yes. We can use projected. You don't have to have any rental history, which is great. We're going to use 75% of whatever the appraiser says the estimated long-term rental, monthly rental amount would be. 75% of that towards the payment. There's some rules there about if you don't have any kind of income, I can't just qualify you on potential rental income. It's capped, I can only, and if you're taking your primary residence and you're turning it, there's a lot of rules. So, but yes, you can use 75% of projected long-term rental income without having a history of rental income on that property or at all. Yes.
Any of those financing products then require you to rent the out the ADU?
No. So there's a couple. So the question is, do you have to, am I proving that, yes, you're going to actually rent that property? And the answer is no. If I'm getting a rent schedule from the appraiser, I just get to use 75% of that. So no, I don't have to have a current lease and first month's rent, none of that.
Is it only for the ADU, or what if your intent would be to move into the ADU and rent out the primary?
No, that won't work. I could use the potential rental income on the ADU, but not on the main house again, because we're back to, it has to be smaller, right, than the main house. And if you're gonna do that, that's great for your own income, right? But to qualify you for a mortgage, I'm gonna only be able to use the ADU for potential rental and consider the main house your primary. I can't flip flop it. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat that. Did I not repeat that, Joe? Sorry.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all. Feel free to reach out. My business cards are up here. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. So just, you can shoot me an email or give me a call. I know it's a big process, so.
Well, I'm going to give you a hand for that.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you, everybody, for being so attentive. Now we get to take a little break for about 10 minutes. We're right on time. For those of you who are in the room, we have snacks over in that corner. Please avail yourself of them. If you haven't yet signed in up here, or if you need a longhand construction and management budget worksheet, you're welcome. I have a couple printed copies. I only got a message from one person saying they needed one, so I only printed out a few more of these, but I have them if necessary. And then before we go on the break, I want to set ourselves up for the next segment on budgeting. So just show of hands, who in here has a tablet or laptop that they brought to use tonight? Real high. Okay. Oh, this is great. Okay. Well, among you, so keep your hands up if you feel comfortable having a buddy look over your shoulder during this next session for folks who weren't able to bring a tablet or laptop tonight. Anybody feel comfortable having a buddy? Okay, great, awesome. So for those of you who don't have a device to go through the worksheets with us, please sit next to a buddy. Those of you online, hopefully you'll also be able to look at these worksheets while we're talking about them. But otherwise, go on your break and come back in 10 minutes at 6:45. That is a good question.
I can go get it.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
What's up?
Wanted to make sure.
Oh, okay, yeah, so it's
And I can sign my
organized
husband too.
alphabetically by first name.
Okay,
And for
here's
some of
me.
you, okay,
Present.
awesome,
Oops.
excellent. And then you
And
can,
Steve.
oh, perfect. And then if you'd like to include your name, email, and phone number in just like a little directory for workshop participants so you all can talk to each other, you can check here. You don't have to, but you may. And then if you'd like to sign up for
Yep,
Park
that's
County
totally fine.
Housing Coalition emails, you also might.
Oh, they're signing me up. He's not.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Both of them are collateral, so for them to.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Split it.
No worries. Would you like to?
Yeah, how did you know?
Yeah.
Well,
So one of them is not like printable. It's like
And then once they fill it, we
that
would
all
have
the
to sign
templates, but two of them are longhand.
Until-
So, yeah.
Yep.
So you're with.
I was,
I've been there for 8 years now, so.
I've been coming in for 10, but I'm not.
But ever since COVID, yeah, I was hiding in the back for a long time.
Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby Joe. Yeah, Bobby Joe.
Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara.
Hi. I'm Meredith. Hi. Nice to meet you. That was great.
Oh, thanks.
Good overview. I had a question. though.
Yes.
I am gonna be. So the purpose of all those programs is to build an ADU that's then used for rental housing. Is that like, or is there any sort of like regulatory aspect to actually build it? I know for like a lending standpoint, it's one thing, but.
But
there's
no,
nothing-
it's just, you know,
Yes.
so if you're building an ADU,
You're doing great.
we want to use potential rental income, but you don't have to. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm on the steering committee for the housing coalition, and one of my big things is I had my grandmother who needed somewhere to live.
Okay.
So
A lot of people did not
ADUs
sign
are
up
important to me
because
from
of
the
the
gen
line, so I
X family.
should have.
So, no,
you don't have to.
We could still use original
Still.
income to qualify, but
So I think I'll just.
is that what you're asking?
Yeah, no, it is. And then the benefit of
So-
the program is really just the interest rates of the financing itself, the favorability of the financing. It's all for you to like just qualify for a standard loan, like why would you go with these programs?
So those are all the loan products.
That are
So-
available.
Mhm, yeah.
So that's just the.
That's just it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like, I'll collect like specific questions and like
So
maybe
you
stuff
can
based on info. Yeah.
And they, even just a couple of years ago, like, it was really hard. And the appraisers always said they called it a T property. So then we had, then all of a sudden it makes your interest rate, it makes your down payment higher. And they changed that just in this last year. So now we
Okay.
really start to realize that
That's
it's
great.
all still
Okay, everybody, time to come back from our break so we can stay on schedule. Awesome.
And I didn't do this yet. Technically, I'm Pam.
Oh, nice.
Yes, there we go.
Awesome.
We'll give her my best.
I think you got all these too.
All right. Ready into our next segment, which is budgeting. And I think we're still recording. Okay, we are. Great. Awesome. Okay. Well, so to get ready for this next section, I first want to make sure that everybody who has a laptop or tablet has pulled up the 2 worksheets that we're going to be reviewing tonight on their devices. So you're able to look at them and work your way through them with us in real time. So who in here has not pulled up any of the worksheets, but has Microsoft Excel installed on their computer? Anybody else with Microsoft Excel? I see one. Great. All right. Well, this will be pretty easy. Oh, library password. So it is capital L. Where is that? Oh, right here. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. All right. Thank you.
Livingston loves reading with capital L.
Yeah. Livingston loves reading. Capital L, no spaces. And it's just the first word, Livingston, is capitalized. So you want to download the files that I sent out in the course email. And while everybody is downloading their files and getting connected to the internet, I'm just going to thank the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative, who agreed to let us adapt and share some of their resources, as well as the City of Sacramento, California, the ADU financial calculator that we have shared. We've just lightly adapted, and they made that for public use. So kudos to them for making such a sophisticated and fun tool. And we're delighted that we can share these with you, and hopefully they'll be useful. So has anybody not been able to access the internet and download the worksheets that we're going over tonight?
Those were the ones we emailed.
That's correct. Has anybody not been able to do that, or can we move to step 2? So you'll need to look at the course email. Yep. So you'll need to download the ADU construction and management budget worksheet. Oh, you'll need to look in your downloads folder. Or if that's only if you're using Microsoft Excel. If you are using Google Sheets to open your documents, then you can open them straight from your email. And I will go over that in just a minute. I wanted to make sure everybody has access to their email and the internet first. Okay, so who has Microsoft Excel installed on their computer or has access to that program? Okay, I'll go through those instructions first. So you'll want to download there are 2 worksheets. One of them is called like construction and management budget worksheet. And the other one is called ADU Financial Calculator Excel. And you'll need to download those. I recommend downloading them to your desktop because they'll be easiest to find. And then you can just click on them and Excel will open them. Joe, how's this process going for you online? Awesome. Good job. Thank you. How's it going in the room? Anybody need a little bit more time or a little extra assistance? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, downloads. Okay, so we just, it looks like they're not downloaded. So let's give me your email. Okay, oh, you're not on.
Yeah, no.
You need to reconnect. So I will connect. Excuse me.
You want me to help them?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yes.
Look over my shoulder. Tell me if you got what you're-
Yep, that's perfect. And then that's
Yeah, but he was there. He was She's going to med school, so she's.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, does anybody else need help here? I'm right. Right? My friends all. And then there's this other one, which is this,
Do you have some extra computers if that one's not on?
no, I called the library to see if they still had a rental program, but
Do you want to just give her this?
Yeah, no worries. I will. Okay, so I have a presentation for you.
Randomly.
You're all set. Okay, does anybody else need help accessing the worksheet? Okay. Thank you all. Let's get started. Awesome. So where do we begin with all of this? We are going to start with the ADU construction and management budget worksheets that you have. They're not the ones with the fancy financial calculator that shows that graph. It's like a very, very simple sort of fill in your costs worksheet. So I'm not going to pull them up on this screen, although I can. I'm just going to go over what is in those worksheets. So you'll see if you're on the construction tab or sheet, which is the first tab or sheet in that construction and management budgeting worksheet, you'll see certain costs. And construction costs can be broken down into two types or two categories. And those are hard costs, which range from things like site work, including demolition and grading, to everything else that goes on top of it. So like your foundation, your framing, your utilities, your finish work, everything that happens after that. And then there's also soft costs, which are a type of costs that frequently get overlooked. So it's really important to be aware of them up front. And they include things like the costs related to your loans, your building permits, or your septic permits for those of you in the county, or potentially in the city. My house in the city of Livingston had a septic tank when I moved in. Septic tank in scare quotes. That was really just a metal bucket in the ground. Could also include if you hire an architect or a designer. If you need an engineer to stamp your drawings, there might be an appraisal involved. And then with both of these types of costs, for construction costs, you will want to have contingencies, right? For unexpected expenses that come up. So typically you'll see contingencies ranging anywhere from 5 to 10%. You could go higher or lower depending upon your risk tolerance or the advice that you get from your builder at the time that you're starting the project. So that is something to always consider and factor in. What I like about the budget worksheet, if you're looking at the first sheet that's called ADU Construction Budget Worksheet, is that it's organized more or less chronologically. So the costs that you're likely to incur earlier in the process of building an ADU, particularly if it's a stick-built home, are higher up on your budget spreadsheet. So you'll see things like financing costs, building permit, planning permit, architectural services, structural engineering, property survey, etc. Like line items for those things early on, because you'll probably be doing those things earlier than you will be hopefully pouring your foundation. This might be look a little bit different if you're doing a renovation, but we wanted to give you this construction budget worksheet that has line items for as many things as possible, just to help you think through the entirety of the project. One way to tackle this, because I personally find this budget worksheet both exciting because I like to itemize things, but also overwhelming. One way that you might consider starting is by going through and deleting things that might not apply to you, just to simplify it. But if you don't know whether it's going to apply to you or not, don't delete it yet. Hopefully, over the course of this class, you'll be able to start filling in some of those line items, getting a better sense of what your permitting costs might be, for example. Maybe you'll call a local financial institution and get a sense of what lending costs might look like. Maybe you know a contractor or are a contractor and you have a sense of what, say, cut and fill work would cost. Or you know that you're going to migrate your current home's appliances over to your proposed accessory dwelling unit. And so you've actually sort of built the replacement of those appliances into your current home costs. And so those are actually going to be theoretically free. So you have this very comprehensive budget worksheet. And one other thing that I want to point out about it is that you have an opportunity to estimate those costs and see where they differ. So the first column after the different items that you can assign cost to is what your projected total is. And then you can square that with what it actually costs and what the difference is. And so this is a way, as you move through your project, to see whether your estimates are on target or not, and see whether you need to intervene at a certain point if something is going off the rails. And that will show up if you're not doing it longhand, that will show up in that third column called variance. So you'll get to track it that way. You can also, as you see, put notes over saying like contractor X is responsible for installing the flooring, contractor Y is responsible for installing the roofing, that kind of thing. So it's a really great way to just sort of track how your project is going, track who is responsible for what, and whether you're staying on budget. So again, it's just a really simple tool, but we wanted to give you an idea of all the potential costs that you could incur, especially if you're going with a stick-built home, either built new or as part of a renovation. Okay, fairly simple. Any questions, any very initial questions about that ADU construction budget worksheet? Becky, actually, if you want to look, you're welcome to. Yes.
I ask for clarity on where the state law is. Is it official, in place, no questions asked? So no impact fees. They're gone.
Yes, and that applies to the city of Livingston.
Yep.
Yes, and we'll be talking more about that in the next section, which is permitting.
For financing, that was a,
Yes,
yes.
absolutely.
Ours went from 13,000 to 13,000.
Yes, yes, that sounds right. And Jennifer, who had to leave, unfortunately, but she'll be back for the permitting session and we'll talk about those costs during them. So you'll get some real clarity around how the bill that I mentioned that made it through the state legislature has waived impact fees for people who are building accessory dwelling units. And that applies to folks in the city of Livingston. So
Just for the ADU, for home you build.
just for the accessory dwelling unit, that's correct. And there are some other considerations related to permitting and zoning and design that are also included in that bill. So we'll talk about those in our session in October. But yes, great question. And so if you want to, I encourage you to bring your computers back to our subsequent sessions so that as you get clarity on some of the costs during these sessions, you can just type them into your spreadsheet. Okay, so the other category of costs documented in the worksheet that you're looking at in the other tab titled Management, which you'll see either at the bottom or the top of your screen. It's titled ADU Management Budget Worksheet when you open it. Anybody need help finding that?
It's shut it down. Right here. Follow my finger, right here. Oh, there you go. Excellent. And that's at the back. Yeah. Thank you.
Everybody's doing so great. And you have it in the back of your packet. Excellent. Okay. So very similar with this other worksheet. What you'll see here are, again, sort of two types of expenses, and those are fixed expenses and variable expenses. And fixed expenses are sort of all the costs that you can count on paying every month. I bet you can anticipate them. They're, the same costs that you pay for your home, probably. Including insurance, which might include flood insurance for some of you. Did any of you get affected by the 2022 flood event? No? Okay. I just want to bring that up because that might be a consideration. You might also be paying for utilities. You might have your mortgage that you're paying, property taxes, things of that nature, insurance. So again, these are the monthly costs that you can expect. The variable expenses are things that are likely to happen, but you don't necessarily know when, although to a certain extent you can plan for them. And they include the vacancy of your accessory dwelling unit. This is for those of you that plan to rent it. I've included a way to factor that into your budget worksheet on this slide here. So basically you multiply your anticipated annual rent by the estimated vacancy rate. We will be talking about vacancy rate during our last session on property management. So we'll have a property manager come in here and they can talk about the rental vacancy rates that they're seeing to give you a better idea of that. And then you just divide that vacancy expense by 12, right? So then you have your monthly vacancy expense, because it's very possible that if you're renting out your accessory dwelling unit, somebody's not going to be living there at some point, right? Something's going to come up and they're going to leave, or you're just going to get sick of it and you want a break or whatever. So it's important to plan for that. You'll want to budget for maintenance and repairs. And there are a few different rules that allow you to budget for maintenance and repairs. The West Denver Renaissance Collaborative identifies 3, and one is the 1% rule, where you budget 1% of your market value annually of your accessory dwelling unit. Another one is the square foot rule, where you're budgeting $1 per square foot annually. Another one is the combined rule, where you budget the average of the 2 figures annually. Or if you are like me, then you budget way more than necessary because you're really anxious about it. This kind of feeds into this capital expenses or major improvements. The West Denver Renaissance Collaborative recommends saving 5 to 7% of your monthly gross rent for these expenses, and they include things like replacing your roof. Maybe you build an accessory dwelling unit that is solar ready, but you don't have all the money upfront to install the solar array. So that is a major improvement that you can plan on installing and saving for later. It might be things like upgrades to your accessory dwelling unit's HVAC system or other sort of system upgrades. This amount will not cover unexpected expenses like damages from tenants or, acts of nature, like a tree falling on your accessory dwelling unit or the wind ripping the roof off, which I really hope won't happen. So that is another reason to budget a little bit more in your maintenance and repairs fund so that you have an emergency fund. Or you're welcome to obviously establish a separate emergency fund for your accessory dwelling unit. But the way that I do it with my house is just adding more than is necessary to maintenance and repairs. So I have that available. So fairly straightforward, and you'll see these costs reflected in your ADU management budget worksheet. You have those fixed expenses at the top with utilities and everything else. I broke it out for garbage, recycling, composting, that kind of thing. Then you have your property costs like mortgage payment, property taxes, and insurance. Property management fees. Again, this will be up to you whether you want somebody to manage your property or not. You could always put your costs for managing your accessory dwelling unit if you plan to rent it into this spreadsheet and estimate the value of your time and see whether it's worth it for you to manage it or not. So that might be relevant. I've also included in your ADU management budget worksheet a line item for the Montana Landlord Association fees. Again, we'll have somebody talk about what that would look like if you become a member in case you want support with renting your accessory dwelling unit. And then, of course, you have that variable expense reserve at the bottom with fields for vacancy, maintenance and repairs, and capital expenses. And of course, you're also welcome to add additional items into this as you go through the process, but we wanted to give you a basic template. Any questions on that? Yeah, pretty straightforward. And I'll be curious, I think I'll be curious to hear some of your budgeting tips when we get to Q&A too, because I bet you all have some experience with that could be really valuable to share with the group. Okay. So moving on to our very fun and shiny financial assessment tool. So switch to the other worksheet that you opened. You should be able to see, well, actually this is, no, it's not this one. So, yeah, and are you using Excel or are you using Google? Then you'll click on them. Okay, awesome. All right. So this worksheet has many, many tabs, and the first one is just a little welcome tab that gives you some basic information on how to use it. But on the second tab, you'll see this fun financial assessment tool. which I am excited to walk you through. So when you open the file, you'll see those 6 sheets or tabs at the bottom of the screen. And the most important one for our purposes is the second sheet from the left titled Financial Calculator. So please go ahead and click on that sheet if you haven't already. You'll see this big, beautiful graph when you do so. Anybody not ready? Joe, have you been able to bring that up on your end? Awesome. Thank you. Sweet. So what this graph depicts at the top will change depending on the inputs that you enter into the rest of the sheet. What you'll see is what this graph shows, which is your ADU's performance over time. This is a rough estimate. But what I think is really helpful is it shows this break-even threshold where your returns are sort of exceeding your inputs. It shows the net lifetime income from your accessory dwelling unit and estimates your accumulated equity. You'll also notice on the right-hand side of the screen, they have some measures to evaluate the financial performance of your accessory dwelling unit beyond just the break-even threshold. So they have something called the internal rate of return, or IRR, which is just a very simplified description of this is the expected annual rate of growth of your investment. And then they also have cash on cash return, which assesses the performance of the actual cash invested in a project at a certain point. So for this, it's at 3 years. And so that's basically like you take the amount of revenue that your accessory dwelling unit has generated before tax. So if you're renting it, this would be applicable, and take that rental income that you've earned before tax and divide it by the amount that you've made in mortgage payments and interest. And that is that measure. So that gives you like a little snapshot in time of where you'll be at 3 years based on that measure. So you can look at all of these things together and assess, how well the performance of your accessory dwelling unit is doing. Again, this is really only if you're renting it out, but there are some other factors to consider as we move further down this budgeting worksheet. So if you scroll down, you'll see this section, these fields that hopefully look a little bit familiar. And you'll notice these little yellow boxes on your screen. And all of those are editable. And actually, maybe what I will do is I will stop sharing and I will just put this tool on the screen so everybody can see it. And we can work through this together. Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay, good. Joe is seeing this. All right. So if you scroll down from here, you see step 1, which is project costs. And this should look familiar because some of these inputs are on that construction budget worksheet that we just walked through. All, as I mentioned, Gesundheit. All of these yellow fields are editable. So depending upon the size of the ADU you want to build, you can change this. Let's say you want a 900 square foot ADU, and you'll see some of these items shift. This home cost estimator on the right-hand side, if you click on the right hand, you can switch from new build to conversion, which is our word in the sheet for renovation. And the hard cost estimate for construction updates. There's a per square foot cost estimate that changes. And these are very, very roughly based on conversations that I've had with builders in this area and looking at manufactured homes, for example, that are available retail. So if you want a new build home with sort of your basic level of finish, and you have a smaller accessory dwelling unit, like 600 square foot, we expect your hard costs to be somewhere around $250 a square foot. And that's even if you're going with a manufactured home option. And that's because you're building such a small structure that all of the most expensive parts of the building, which are your like plumbing and things of that nature, are going to be concentrated into a small space. One thing that can really, really affect these estimates is you doing it yourself or getting things for free or deals. So labor can make up potentially 30% of a budget. You'll notice if you went to the ADU tour, you'll see that some of our homeowners who participated in that had costs that are way, way lower for the construction of their accessory dwelling units. And that is because they are doing a lot of the work themselves and they are scouring the Restore in the Gallatin Valley or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist for excess materials that people have left over after their construction work is completed. So you don't have to buy a whole new set of tiles. You can just keep your eye on Facebook Marketplace for many, many, many months. And there it is likely that somebody will have tile left over from their project that might be suitable for yours. So there are ways to lower these costs from the square foot estimate we put in. But we tried to put in estimates that are a little higher. So we're giving you a buffer. If you find after filling out your budget worksheets that your hard costs for construction are a lot lower, this is independently editable. So it doesn't have to reflect what's over here. This home cost estimator might spit out $150,000 for your accessory dwelling unit. But if you're like, I'm doing the build myself, I can do it for, it turns out I can do it for $80,000. You can still put that in over here and we'll have that reflected up top. Again, this is just an estimator tool to help you get started before you start figuring out what your actual costs are going to be. So as we talked about, there's a line item for hard costs. So those things that go into the actual construction of your accessory dwelling unit, your soft costs, and your contingency. And it shows you also what the percentage of your total budget is.
It didn't change the 150,000 when you made it at 80,000.
Right. So this is just the estimate.
But it's based on these numbers on the left, right?
No. So this is totally independent. This is like this, its own little module in here just to help you get to a hard cost estimate. So what shows up here is a combination of your ADU size and your choice of new build or conversion, and then your choice of level of finish, low, medium, or high. So again, especially with conversions or renovations or retrofits, those costs can vary wildly. Like if I were renovating my garage into an accessory dwelling unit, it would probably be the cost of a new build and then some, because my current garage is pre-1920s and it's got a big lean and that thing has got terrible water damage and it basically just needs to be demoed. And it's also really, really small. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that a renovation is going to cost less than a new build, but there are worlds in which that happens. So one of the participants in the Livingston ADU tour bought a home with an above garage space that was nearly finished, and it just needed somebody to sprinkle a little love on it in the form of a kitchen and bathroom. And so they were able to have a conversion or retrofit or renovation that was substantially lower cost. But again, they also don't have, they were dealing with a space that had already been worked on by the prior owner. So again, these are just a very, very, very rough estimate to get you started. Okay, next section. Operating assumptions. So these should look familiar because they show up on your management budget worksheet. Things like your anticipated monthly rent, annual rent increases, your vacancy rate, which we talked about, and we'll hopefully get some insight from property managers on in December. Your annual operating costs, which you can estimate based on, the maintenance that you anticipate having, major home improvements, that kind of thing. They also include other fees like your property taxes, home insurance. Obviously, if you're not getting flood insurance, you can zero this out. Like I said, all of these little yellow boxes are editable. Yes.
Post-bill increase.
That would be related to the value of your property. And, oh, that's a great question. I wanted to identify this glossary tab here at the bottom. So if you are looking at things like internal rate of return or post-build increase, you can navigate to the glossary tab and see, yes, the increase in the project value after completion, typically 20 to 30%. All right, so next and last little input that affects the graph at the top, which is project financing. So if you are working with a local financial institution and you're getting a loan for this project, here is where you can plug in the details. You can also change this financing for ADU tab to no, and then it won't show up. It won't be factored into this graph at the top. Again, this is just a tool to help you estimate and think about your project. This isn't finely tuned for our real estate market, but we did try to adjust it a little bit based on what we know about construction costs in the area. Yeah, any questions about this? It makes a lot more sense once you start plugging in and playing with inputs. And again, it's particularly useful for those of you that plan on utilizing your accessory dwelling unit to have a certain kind of return. So some of you were thinking about factoring income from your accessory dwelling unit into your retirement plans. Some of you are thinking about it, just having it as an additional income stream. Some of you are also just kind of like, maybe I want to create housing for community members, and like, what will that cost me? And how long do I want to keep my home for? Like, am I going to keep my home for as long as the payback period is? Or like, if I sell, would I have to factor that in? So this tool can help you start to think about and answer some of those questions. And again, just a really rough tool, but kind of fun to use. Any questions about this tool? I will try my best to answer them. I guess I'll just show you some of these other tabs at the bottom. So as I mentioned, there's this glossary tab. So we tried to identify some of the key terms in there. There's also these other tabs at the bottom. These are all the assumptions that are built into that little graph that appears at the top and are scattered throughout this financial calculator. So if you really want to go hard into this and adjust the assumptions on the back end, you absolutely may. I can't show you these tabs because they're kind of hidden by this Google Meeting thing. Okay. No. Oh, there we go. Yes, thank you. Is that working? In any event, yeah. So you can, this is the pro forma tab. And again, these are more opportunities for you to adjust your assumptions about operating costs. I recommend if you want to mess with the model, just make a separate copy and say like my copy and date it. And then you can play with it as much as you want, and then you'll still have the original copy. Thank you. And then lists is actually just where we put in our assumptions about construction costs for this area. So we have sort of this base cost per square foot for new build and construction, or new build, sorry, and renovation. which is $150 and $75 per square foot. And then we added on these little premiums depending upon the level of finish of your build to get to the price per square foot that you're seeing in that in this home cost estimator on the first page of the model. So you're welcome to mess with all of those if you want to, and you're also welcome to just leave them as is, again, to help you think through some of these considerations. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and invite any questions. Yeah, it's late, and these are a lot of spreadsheets. And hopefully those first two spreadsheets in particular are pretty straightforward. I actually find the financial calculator, once you look at it, a little bit longer to be pretty straightforward too, because a lot of the inputs there are ones that you can start working on developing through the other two budget worksheets. Excellent. Does anybody have any different budgeting considerations that we haven't talked about, or easier to use tools or rules of thumb when you're thinking about projects and budgeting that you'd like to share with the group?
Well, it just occurs to me that if you buy a home and you're going to add a unit and you have a contract, you're going to have that unit brought in and constructed, and you have a contract with a builder, that you are not involved as deeply in all of these construction costs, because you have a contractual amount that you're going to pay for a finished unit. Of course, all the rental income and rate of returns, yes, you have to, that's your business, not the contractor's business. But it just seems like if you're paying $250 a square foot in Livingston to do this, you should be able to get a contractor to sign off on a contract with you for a fixed fee to build something that is in plans and specifications, and you're not involved to this extent in construction.
You would hope so. And I agree. And this can also be helpful depending upon your personality type. Like if you're me, even if your project had a project manager, I would still be doing this. Or if you're going to integrate some DIY components into your project and say have a contractor cover, the foundation and all the stuff related to site work and grading and that kind of thing, but you are going to frame it because you were a framer at one point, or maybe you are a framer and you just love using your nail gun, then that will be the part of the project that you manage. And then you bring in other trades, right, to plumb or electrify your house, to do the finished carpentry, or maybe you're really good at finished carpentry and you have everybody do it up to that point. Because what I have been seeing, at least with the folks who participated in our ADU tour, is there's a certain amount of DIY that happened on those projects. So this is also a way for you to factor that in. It could also be a way for you to look for savings too. And you say, especially when you're doing the finish work on your home, if you say, I would really, really love a fully tiled bathroom in my ADU, and you get sort of a base price or a base estimate from your contractor for that. And you're like, whoa, how much of that is going to be materials? And they say a lot because you chose a really, really fancy type of Zia tile. Then that's when you can go back to your budget worksheet and say, okay, I got to go to Facebook Marketplace and it's got to be this amount. And that's how I'm going to make it work. So again, it's a tool that you can sort of bring into your process as needed, depending upon your goals and sort of the level of involvement that you want to have, right? Yeah. Great. Joe, any questions there? Ooh, we're at 7:30, so I should probably wrap up, huh? Okay. Well, I just have a couple more tidbits to share with you. So thank you for holding on.
Quick comment.
Yes, absolutely.
If you need to tear a garage down,
Mhm.
put it up on Facebook Marketplace. Somebody came and got mine.
Really? That is an unbelievable tip.
Probably saved us $7,000.
I never.
Reclaimable lumber in it. That's big business. I'll come for it.
Wow, that is really
Might
good to
even be able Put a
know.
price on it. But we can do cleanup. It was gone in a day. Yep.
So that's actually a great segue to our next little section, which is just homeowner wisdom. This came from the homeowners who participated in our ADU tour, and they include budget considerations like plan for higher or unforeseen costs. So think about your contingency carefully. Do as much of the work yourself as you can to lower those labor costs and have control of the process. Although whether you want to have control or not may or may not be a good thing. Communication and planning. Talk to your local planners early. We're going to try and help you do that by having our planners come to the next session at both the county and the city. Talk to your neighbors early also was another tip. And be nice to them in the form of landscaping or fencing. Get all your ducks in a row before you break ground. So don't bring a backhoe or whatever out into your backyard without having some clear plans and your permitting in place. Design considerations. So like look at other structures in the area for inspiration, and spending a lot of time on design, which I would argue is related to the budget, can help you stay within your means. And then just be really clear about what you need and be flexible about what you do not need. And that will hopefully be helpful. So next steps, I'm going to send a Google form out to you this week that I'm going to ask you to complete by Friday, October 11th, with opportunities to provide feedback on today's session, unanswered questions from today's session, questions that you have about permitting design that I can forward along to our planners. And then your addresses, if you feel comfortable sharing with them. So Jennifer Severson and Mike Inman can look up where you are and check and see if there are any special considerations for your property. If you don't want to share, that's totally fine too. And then your also homework is to start on your budget worksheet. So play around with that financial calculator, start filling in your construction budget, or as I said, deleting items that aren't relevant. Call for some quotes, or find out the cost of your favorite tile and come prepared to share what you learned, because I will be calling on you during the next session. And then that's it. So you can go to parkcountyhousing.com and subscribe to our email list. Obviously, you've checked the box if you want me to subscribe you, so I will be doing that. And then you can reach out to me, Becky, or Jennifer at the following email addresses. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is it. Next session is Monday, October 28th. Is that the right day? Yeah, I'm just going to check my calendar real quick. Yes, Monday, October 28th, here again. You're welcome to join remotely if you must, but I really like the in-person, and we do have some pretty good snacks. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.